What's going on, guys? It's your boy JFT coming at you with the results for UFC on ESPN number 3. Now, today we're discussing Junior Dos Santos versus Francis Ngannou and how that fight went. On the night, we had 7 finishes. 6 of them came by KO or TKO. We only saw 1 submission on the second fight. On the prelims, we saw a tough finalist, Maurice Greene, take on Junior Albini, pick up the win. Maurice Greene finishes the fight in the first 4 minutes of the fight. Amanda Ribas defeats Emily Whitmire via rear naked choke 2 minutes and 10 seconds into round number 2. Dalcha Lungiambula, I can't say that name perfectly, but I'm going to probably have to start saying his name more often because he showed a dynamic and diverse game of wrestling, and then he finished him with strikes. So nonetheless, Dalcha is going to be a very, very interesting fighter for this UFC light heavyweight division. In the 3-round fight, he was able to finish it in the last minute of the 3rd round. 10 minutes and 42 seconds total fight time. Oh, of the 3rd round, he finished it. Under a minute of the 3rd round, sorry. But yeah, no, he used his wrestling in the first few rounds. He's probably going to be a problem very, very soon. Then we saw a good scrap between Jared Flash Gordon, Dan Moret. Jared Flash Gordon ended up picking up the victory in a decision that became clear as the first round ended, as the second round went through, the 3rd round went through. A lot of wrestling. He dominated the wrestling positions on the feet. Once they got there in the 3rd round, they both looked tired. But when they went back to the ground, the transitions led to Jared on top. It was a really, really close fight, but the best part of it was clearly Jared Flash Gordon's post-fight speech with John Anik in the ring. Jared Gordon went out and shouted out all the people struggling with all different sorts of abuses and said that he loves them all and that he should be a pillar of goodwill, good feeling that you can do it, you can come back from it, and you just got to keep grinding. So that was a great moment in the fight, and then we get to a brutal knockout from Eryk Anders, flipping the pace on Vinicius Moreira, getting back in the winning column. After his last performance against Cleo Roundtree, he absolutely got dominated in that fight. He also had lost his last 2 fights before that to Elias Theodorou, who's actually no longer on the UFC roster, and Thiago Santos, who, if you lose to him, what's the big deal, especially in the wars that Eryk Anders puts on. It was a great fight. Eryk Anders is one of those guys that he may not get a win all the time, but if you're going to watch one of his fights, you better watch one of his fights. If you're an MMA fan, better be watching his fights whenever they come on the TV. Then we got to the main card. No, we didn't get to the main card yet. We got the main event of the prelims. Ricardo Ramos take on Journey Newson. Newson stepping in as a late replacement for the injured Sergio Pettis. Ramos showed why he's in the UFC, and Newson is just started. That was his UFC debut. Ramos showed advantages on the feet. I thought Newson could have finished the fight with leg kicks late in the 2nd round or in the 3rd round once he had him really, really hurt. But the 3rd round I'd give a little more credit off because of the fact that he was rocked and dazed by a very, very mean elbow from Ramos. Ramos won the fight via decision. In a good decision, it was a decision that should have went the way of Ramos. But Newson really has to get his corner advice working because he should have attacked those legs right after Ramos felt it in the 2nd round. Then we got to the main card, and it started with Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series winner Alonzo Menifield. Well, he won his fight in under 10 seconds. He won it in 8 seconds. He took on one of the UFC's mainstays in Paul Craig. Paul Craig started to make a name for himself as finishing off some of the new guys with his win over Kennedy in his last fight, but the power was just too much. The athletic ability of Alonzo was just too much, and he's another problem. At 205, this guy is going to be dangerous, and it only took him 3 minutes and 19 seconds to dispatch of Paul Craig. Paul Craig was trying to get Menifield to the ground, was unable to do that at any point. When he pulled guard after a weird little transition, he ate a huge shot from Menifield coming down into his guard, and that put Paul Craig to sleep. Alonzo Menifield picks up a big win in his 2nd UFC fight, and we're going to see more of this guy in the very, very near future. This is the guys Dana White loves. Then you get Drew Dober picking up a win in another beautiful finish. The finishes of Eryk Anders, Alonzo Menifield, and Dober were all 10 out of 10. The first 2 fights on the main card went pretty quick, so we got a pretty big delay between this fight and Roosevelt Roberts' fight, but Drew Dober does pick up the win, improves to 21-9, defeating Polo Reyes. Marco Polo was his walkout name. That was a pretty big joke on the Twitter world, but nonetheless, Dober finishes the fight in under 1:10. He was a big favorite in that fight, and he gets the job done at 155. Then we get to another 155 fight in Roosevelt Roberts, who is 8-0 going into the fight and is now 8-1 because Vinc Pichel put on a performance and demanded himself be put in the UFC 3 game. So nonetheless, Vince puts on a good fight, unanimous decision his way. In the grappling exchanges, Pichel dominated. In the striking positions, he actually won in that end of the third round, but I felt like Roberts had the advantage on the feet, but the ground gap was more for Pichel's favor, and that's what won him the unanimous decision. And then we got to another decision between veteran of the game, one of the best jiu-jitsu specialists of all time, Demian Maia, took on Anthony Rocco Martin, and in a loss, Rocco Martin put on one of the best performances I've seen from him, completely starching Maia's game and getting the fight back to the feet 99% of the time. When Martin needed to get that fight back to the feet, at any point where he's on the ground with Demian Maia, he wants to get the fight back to the feet. And when he needed to get the fight back to the feet, he got the fight back to the feet. So Rocco Martin, good for him. That was a great performance against one of the guys that once they take you down, usually finishes 90% of the people on the welterweight roster. But and then we get to the two hype fights of the night. First off, Joseph Benavidez picks up the win. He delivers on what he wanted to deliver on. Now, this was the biggest tension moment for me going into the card, and it had a big weight to me to get this from 3-star card to a 3.5-star card. Joseph Benavidez did exactly what he should have done. Joseph Benavidez said to the masses, I'm going to, well, he didn't say to the masses, but we all knew going into this fight that if Benavidez won, he was the next in line to fight Cejudo. He was the most deserving. He has the best case to fight the bantamweight and flyweight champion Henry Cejudo. So what did he do? Now, what he would have done wrong, what would have been a bad thing for Benavidez in this fight? The bad thing would have been if he went in there and he won or lost a boring decision. If he lost, that would be the worst. But if he won a boring decision, that would have been number one worst thing he possibly could have done. Because the flyweights have this enigma to the casual fan of being a boring style of fighting. Even though, as MMA fans, we know it's fast and wild, like the transition schemes. Bisping does a good job at highlighting these moments in flyweight fights where it's just like, man, how are they doing this? How are they so fast? How are they so good at what they're doing? You'd never see a transition go to a fighter getting mount and then the fighter in mount getting to a worse position in under a second. If one of the welterweights or any weight class above that got into mount, they would slow the fight down because of the weight difference and the strength that comes from those divisions. But at flyweight, they're flying around these guys. They can't dominate a position for more than a second, so the ground transitions are wild. Now, Benavidez, if he did a really boring fight and lost, or boring fight and he won, that wouldn't have been a good statement to Henry Cejudo, who has a full roster to pick from at bantamweight and flyweight, whoever he wants, and most likely that's going to be bantamweight, and he even has some featherweight fights that he possibly could get into. But what does Benavidez do? He goes in, he faces adversity to start off, he gets the cut above his eye puffs up. What does he do in the second round? He comes out there, lands a head kick, and finishes the fight with a flurry of strikes. Exactly what he needed to do. He put a statement on the win, and now he's the only guy that makes sense to fight Henry Cejudo. And the post-fight interview just went that much better. It was like, Henry Cejudo, I'm going to basically summarize it. I'm not paraphrasing or anything, but I'm going to summarize what he said. Henry Cejudo, I'm the guy in this division that's been here since the start, that's done it for the division, that's beaten the best. The only guy I couldn't beat was Demetrius Johnson. He didn't say that, but that's just what I picked apart from it. I beat you. I beat the champion, the now flyweight champion. I beat you. And he was speaking directly to him. I've been here longer than you. I've done it longer than you. I've stuck with my division. I fought for my division because Henry Cejudo's been questioned for leaving the flyweight division and giving the okay on the flyweight division dying. And Benavidez just said, I'm not going to chase you. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to stand my ground. I'm the champ of this division right now. And if you're going to run from me, you can run from me. Call out all the names in the world. He's called out Max Holloway. He's called out a bunch of different guys. But the one name he has not called out is Joseph Benavidez. And that's the fight that's got to be made. If that's not the fight that's made next, I really have bad hopes for the flyweight division. And I really think the MMA community should make a stand against the UFC denying this for being the fight. This has to be the fight. Benavidez versus Henry Cejudo. That's the next fight to make. That's the only fight to make for Henry Cejudo. And if it doesn't happen, there's some BS behind the scenes going down. Frankie Edgar wins, the UFC might push Cejudo to become the first 3-time champ. That's just all horse shit. If you win 3 belts, you got to look at the weight of the belt, man. You go up to bantamweight, you win the belt. You won the belt. Good for you. If you don't defend the flyweight belt, you're not the flyweight champion. We get that you got the belt. You're going to walk around like you're the 3-weight world champion. Conor walked around like he was the 2-weight world champion, like he was the greatest featherweight of all time with 0 featherweight title defenses. You can't claim to be the best at something when you've done it 7 times. You can't do that. That's not the question. Belts don't really mean that much to me. It's how you won the belt. What did you do to win the belt? Like, George St. Pierre's one belt at welterweight was more than that second belt at middleweight. I look at him as one of the best welterweights ever. I don't look at him as a two-weight world champion. He came in there and beat a champion who was champion nonetheless, but wasn't it? If you looked at Michael Bisping, where do you rank him as one of the champions of that welterweight division, or of the middleweight division anyway? We know the Reaper was the champion in that division. Bisping should have fought the Reaper, and that would have cemented Bisping as the champion of that division. He never did. He fought GSP in a super fight. GSP won the belt. That's not that big to me. That's not that big to me. If he beat Khabib, that's big to me because Khabib's undefeated and looks like one of the next greatest of all time contenders. That would be the statement there. It wouldn't be that he got 30 belts. Don't think that you getting more belts means that you're the greatest in the divisions. If you can go up, you're not the greatest in the division that you moved up from. That's not how this shit works. You have to defend your belt, and you have to do it consistently. Rant over, okay? Rant is over. Let's move on to the main event. Francis Ngannou. Well, summary, Benavidez versus Cejudo. Get it done. Now, okay, moving on. Francis Ngannou versus Junior Dos Santos. If you were going into this fight with a sensical prediction, you would have predicted this outcome. First round finish for Francis Ngannou. It was simply that. A first round finish for Francis Ngannou. JDS just couldn't hang with the power. Francis is legitimately one of the scariest people on the roster. But this really doesn't mean anything for me. I don't know what this is going to mean for us. What is this going to do? Is he going to get the winner? If DC wins, will the UFC do DC Ngannou, and will they skip out on DC versus Jones at heavyweight? I don't think they will. So I don't know what this fight has done for him. If Stipe wins the world title, I think that clears up Stipe versus Ngannou, and then you just do DC versus Jones. But who knows if Jones wants to fight DC without a heavyweight belt? That's a possibility. So the possibility of Stipe Ngannou if Stipe beats Daniel Cormier, and then the possibility if Stipe loses to Daniel Cormier, they still run Stipe versus Ngannou. That would be the most sensical thing for me. The path for me would be, hopefully Cormier wins. If Cormier wins, you do Cormier-Jones on the December card, and then you do Stipe Ngannou either on that card, the winner fights the title again, or, no, that's it, or you run them in their own fight night main event. That would be the closest thing for me. Nobody else in that heavyweight division really has a claim at a title fight. Who's put together some odd wins of top 5 guys like Francis Ngannou has, or legends of the sport like Ngannou has? Ngannou's number 1 to get a title shot. Stipe's getting the title shot, so obviously he's number 1.5. And then there's Daniel Cormier, who's the champion. And John Jones with the story with Daniel Cormier. If it's not Daniel Cormier, I don't want to see John Jones at heavyweight. That's a simple fact for me. I don't know about you guys, what you think of that, but that would be my thing. But that's probably the best course of action for the UFC, and the course of action I think the UFC is probably hoping for, because I know Ngannou would say, I'm down to fight Stipe, win or lose, without the belt or with the belt. I want to get that fight back. So that's a fight to make, and then we see where it goes. But we really have to see where it goes. That's what I'm saying from this. Junior Dos Santos loses. What's next for him? Who knows? If he wants to keep fighting, they give him Alistair Overeem maybe. Like, give him that Alistair Overeem type feel. Give him a lower guy in the rankings. Run him back what he was doing before with the Blagoy Ivanov win in the Tide Tuivasa. Like, have him as a state poll to determine if you're a heavyweight contender or if you're just not there yet and you need to refine your skills a little more. That's what I think with JDS. But the results of the fight, 1 minute 11 TKO for Francis Ngannou. And that does it for my results video. Let me know anything you want to know in the comment section below or on a Twitter thread below. And just enjoy fights in general. It was a 3.5 card for me. 3.5 stars. Just the hype behind it wasn't there. The card for itself outweighed what we thought it was going to be, so that's what got it at 3.5. It probably would have been a 2.5 if the fights were bad, but the fights were pretty good. It was a good card to watch. If you're an MMA fan and you want to go watch those fights, I would recommend watching it. But that'll do it for me today. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, remember to smash that like button, and if you enjoy the content coming here on Combat Sports Central, remember to leave a subscribe so that we can talk to you every day and join us in the streams every damn week. Thank you guys so much for watching. That'll do it for me. Peace out, guys.